Imagine if we could take the real session performances by world-class musicians in Tonalic, with all the micro-timing, human feel, and chord adaptability that makes it so powerful, and then integrate that so seamlessly into your DAW that the music remains your focus. Forget about the workflow. You focus on the flow. The work part happens automatically. Well, we don't have to imagine that, because Tonalic is capable of integrating through ARA, like here in Studio One, in a way that brings the music-making experience front and center. The best way to appreciate that is to see it happening by building up a song. And we could build up an idea from scratch. But I want to do something that I find even more creatively daunting than staring at a blank canvas. That is, staring at an almost blank canvas. Because if I have nothing to start, well, I can go any musical direction I want. But in cases like this, where I've got a demo from a songwriting partner, I need to go in her direction. And Tonalic is amazing at taking these type of ideas
I'll say the quiet part aloud, shout it and run,
and quickly getting them to their full potential.
we might as well say the quiet part aloud while we come undone.
So let me show you how. The demo recording itself is simple yet inspiring.
You fade like a ghost, the echoes and outlines can't hold me down.
But it's also just a single stereo file, and I need the vocal isolated so that I can build an arrangement around it, and I need to know the song's chords. Using stem separation, I can isolate the voice and piano onto separate tracks.
Just like you do it every time, I just can't keep you.
Then, enable my global chord track and drag the piano up to have Studio One analyze and chart its chords for me. This works particularly well because this piano demo has clear, long sustained chords that are easy to analyze. And as you'll soon see, Tonalic will be using this chord track to adapt and create session performances for us, so we want to make sure it's right. And in the case of this piano, Studio One got it right. But there are several ways to get chords into our global chord track, however. We're not limited to audio analysis. We could use Studio One's built-in chord selector to populate the chord track. We could drag MIDI regions up to the chord track, or use popular plugins like Scalar. And in fact, the Tonalic plugin itself has its own chord assistant we can use to drag chords into the global chord track, but which also helps us build chord progressions by suggesting chords which would nicely follow this one as well. Having our chords in the global chord track is all we need for Tonalic to now follow my song. So let's start with some rhythm guitar using Tonalic Essential. Tonalic Essential features a signature collection of session performances by guitarist Uwe Bossert, the kind of stuff that just seems to work every time you reach for it. And best of all, you might already have Tonalic Essential, because as the bundle-only edition of Tonalic, it's included with other things you might have bought, like Melodyne or Studio One here. In fact, in Studio One, Tonalic is deeply integrated. You'll notice that the moment you install it, because Tonalic now lives right here in the browser as a central feature of Studio One's creative tools. On Tonalic's Explore page, I'll browse under Uwe's Choice. Each curated compilation has a theme, like acoustic strumming. Clicking Preview gives a taste of what's inside. That's exactly what I'm after, strummed acoustic rhythm guitar. Once I open this compilation, I can see Tonalic's tagged for acoustic instruments, chords, and rhythmic strummed parts. Even before I press play, the Tonalic icons indicate each pattern's shape and density. Since our DAW isn't playing back right now, Tonalic is previewing these with the Accompany button active and Example turned on inside the preview window. This plays each Tonalic using its own example chord progression, example tempo, and paired with some additional instruments. If I instead disable the example chord progression and tempo, you'll hear the Tonalic previews now adapt themselves to my song's tempo, along with the current and next chord in Studio One's chord track. This simple strumming Tonalic pattern is precisely what I had in mind to get started. So watch, I just drag this Tonalic icon into the blank area of the arranger where no track exists yet, then extend it across the song using Studio One's loop tool, and now we've got a tonalic region perfectly laid out.
You fade like a ghost, the echoes and outlines can't hold me down.
But let's break down exactly what that means. Zooming in, you might notice that even though we define this region's length using the loop tool, this isn't a loop. I'll say that again. This isn't a loop. What repeats is the idea. A strumming pattern like we saw depicted in the tonalic icon. That classic thing of down, 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 up, down, down, up. Beyond that, however, this tonalic region is nothing like a loop or sample. It's a living custom performance, as if Uwe Bossert recorded this guitar part for me, strumming all 21 measures. As the chord track moves from C minor to G minor to F minor, the chord voicings inside the tonalic region adapt automatically. Zoom in further, and you'll see subtle micro-timing variations, tiny anticipations or laid-back strums, just like a real player would do. Tonalic has captured and replicated the human timing from Uwe's actual session, so each bar naturally evolves. And not through algorithmic humanization DSP, through real human feel. Specifically, Uwe's feel. That's what a tonalic region represents, a session performance built on a real musician's touch, adapting in real time to your chords, and sounding as if a pro just played on your track. While all that was happening from one simple drag and drop, the ARA host is handling everything else for us too. Creating tracks, loading plugin instances, the routing. We didn't have to do any setup steps. And that is the beauty of Tonalic's ARA integration. It's not just efficient, it's freeing. Because every time we stop to think technically, we lose creative momentum. Tonalic and Studio One have made sure that we stay focused on the music. Which, speaking of the music, this acoustic guitar now sounds far more inspiring than the original piano track.
You fade like a ghost, the echoes and outlines can't hold me down.
In fact, it's pushing me towards a moodier trip-hop direction. I'm hearing a 90s style drum loop, something like Portishead or the Sneaker Pimps. That classic Tonalic isn't the only musical collection inside Studio One's browser. I can also access Splice, where I'll search for a trip-hop drum loop. Like this. I'll drag it in, extend it, and now our Tonalic guitar and Splice drums are definitely setting the vibe. Let's layer another guitar to deepen that mood. Back in Tonalic Essential, I'll head to Uwe's smooth arpeggios, a perfect counterbalance to the strummed rhythm part. When auditioning additional Tonalic layers, I like to set my loop markers so I can press play, and then audition options in context with the song. The real magic of Tonalic is that all of these sound pretty good to match my strumming. But I am particularly drawn to the chord voicings and electric guitar sound of this Tonalic. Just like before, I'll drag it into the song and extend it. If I double-click any Tonalic region in the Arrange view, Studio One's editor opens with that Tonalic's set page. All the main patterns, variations, builds, pickups, and endings Uwe originally played that I can use to build a custom performance. And I can listen to many set page options from this one horizontal view. I like the dynamic push in Build 2. But before I add that to this existing track, here in Studio One, I personally prefer and would recommend going to the Preferences, Advanced, and checking off No Overlap when editing events. That way, when I now drag a Tonalic pattern on top of an existing Tonalic region in the Arrange view, Studio One automatically replaces bars 3 and 4 with Build 2. And if I bring in main 3 at bar 9 where the pre-chorus starts, what I have now is my own performance, shaped by me, but infused with Uwe's feel and musicality. genuinely feels collaborative, like asking a session player if they could play something more busy from the pre into the chorus. Another thing I might ask to try if I were in the room with Uwe is a halftime feel. More space, fewer notes. Double-clicking a Tonalic region to open its set page in the editor, I just changed the speed from 1 time to halftime. And because it's a Tonalic and not an audio sample, it's not just time-stretched. It's far more clever than that. It's musically readapted. Tonalic keeps the essence of Uwe's arpeggio idea while adapting it naturally to that slower pocket, making the same musically reductive choices he might. And as a guitarist, I gotta say, Tonalic nails it. You might have noticed too that the halftime setting applies to the whole Tonalic set. So I only need to choose it once, and all the different variations and Tonalic regions I have on my track adapt. Of course, if I wanted some to be halftime and some not, I can always put the same Tonalic on a new track and choose different settings. This halftime feel makes me want to add a rotary speaker effect, perfect for deepening the trip-hop atmosphere. At this point, I'm ready to evolve this track beyond a 90s vibe to something more modern, in the spirit of Haim or Paramore. And for that, I'll need electric bass, a live drummer's feel, and some big, distorted guitars. When it's time to take this song to that next level, there are the Tonalic Arranger and Tonalic Studio editions that go way beyond Tonalic Essential, adding dozens of session players, a huge instrument library of guitars, bass, drums, percussion, and other oddities, along with some advanced customization features in Tonalic Studio, as well as the tones you can dial in. So, now upgraded in Tonalic Studio, the workflow stays identical, just with more instruments, artists, and creative range. Let's start with electric bass. I want a part inspired by Nick Movshan. Trust me, you've heard his P-bass on records by Bruno Mars, Lana Del Rey, Amy Winehouse, and many more. His combination of tone and touch is perfect for this verse. Listen to what this does with our guitar and drums. And if I wanted to use another Tonalic pattern from Nick's set page, I could open this region in the editor and drag an alternative Tonalic over top of this one. However, if I wanted to swap the full length of this existing region as I've extended it out to, in Studio One, I could hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on Windows, and you'll see this new Tonalic pattern replaces the entire existing one. This bass line ties everything we've done together, but our demo vocal, it still sounds like a demo.
You fade like a ghost, the echoes and outlines.
Fortunately, Tonalic isn't Celemony's only ARA plugin integration in Studio One. I can use Melodyne Essential to tune the lead vocal, even create artificial double and triple tracks, then pan them to the side a bit, add a low-end roll-off and some reverb, and suddenly the vocal feels thick, polished, and mixed into the track.
You fade like a ghost, the echoes and outlines can't hold me down. My words have exposed the static from sound, the loss from the found.
Once the pre-chorus arrives, I want the energy to rise into a huge chorus, and for that, I need real drums played by a real drummer. I found this Tonalic set by Alex Reeves, and I really like the deep-bodied snare drum in this kit. So I'll bring that into my song. But if I solo those drums and add the trip-hop loop, there's too many hi-hats going on. And I can't fix that in a splice loop, but I certainly can in Tonalic Studio. I just double-click my drum region to open the editor and dial back the cymbals or turn them off completely. Now my splice loop and Tonalic drums feel nice and powerful without too much top end. And I will bring in a little more top end, but this time with tambourine. In fact, here's a fun trick. I'll drag in a Tonalic tambourine that hits on the snare backbeat, reinforcing the downbeats of the drums. But using that same half-time, double-time control I used on the guitar arpeggio, I can flip the feel. You see, when you double-time a backbeat tambourine pattern, it now plays on the upbeats instead, instantly lifting the energy. Watch. So we've built the vibe in the verse, we've raised the energy in the pre-chorus, now it's time to pay it off with a big, powerful chorus. I'll start with distorted guitar chords that ring out. In Tonalic, I'll search solid body guitars, add the distorted tag, and priority sort by lowest density so the sustained patterns rise to the top. The icons make auditioning easy. Short staccato Tonalics look tight, while Tonalic icons with a ringing tail indicate full ringing chords like I want. I'll drag it in and extend it through the chorus. To thicken things up, I'll add another filter to my search, layered performances. That's Tonalic's version of double-tracked guitars for extra depth. And building layered arrangements like this with Tonalic is both effortless and fast. I can just browse for Tonalics, bring them into my song, go back to the search results to find another interesting layer, bring that one in, and each time, Tonalic does its magic to adapt these parts to my chords, figure out the best voice leading, match the feel against the rest of my parts, and so forth, until I've quickly got a wall of sound power in my chorus. To finish up this production, I'll add some additional musical layers and polish, like strings. Electric piano and a synth. And I'll even create harmonies from the vocal melody using Melodyne.
So I'll say the quiet part aloud.
Put it all together, and in no time, we've gone from this demo
You fade like a ghost. The echoes and outlines can't hold me down.
to a fully realized song.
You fade like a ghost. The echoes and outlines can't hold me down. My words have exposed the static from sound, the lost from the found. But you're filling up my mind just like you do it every time. I just can't keep you inside. So I'll sing the quiet part aloud, shout it and run. We might as well sing the quiet part aloud while we come undone.
And best of all, the ARA integration of Tonalic means we can explore and arrange the music while staying focused on the music. That shouldn't be a radical idea, and yet I've never experienced it before in a plug-in workflow. Whatever creative paths I wanted to go down along the way, and whatever creative curveballs I threw at Tonalic, it kept up with me, adapting perfectly as if I had brought session players in for the task. And I certainly have more creative paths and curveballs that I intend to try with Tonalic, so make sure to join me again for more.